Greetings, everyone. This is Live Life Well TV host Robert Landau. We're back with another episode of one of our most popular show series here on Live Life Well TV. And we have you to thank for that, America's greatest personalities. This episode, we will take a quick look at one of my favorites, probably yours too, the always amazing Mary Tyler Moore. Stay tuned. We'd like to acknowledge the following two websites before we begin: thehobbyhive.com and thefamouspeople.com. So let's start out with some of the things that Mary Tyler Moore was most famous for saying. First, she once said, "I knew at a very early age what I wanted to do." Some people refer to it as indulging in my instincts and artistic bent. I call it just showing off, which was what I did from about 3 years of age on. Many of the personalities that we talk about in this series knew exactly what they wanted to do at a very early age. So once they knew, then they had to figure out how best to make their dreams come true. But what Mary was saying in this quote that we just shared with you was she began to feel, she began to visualize what it would be like being a performer, being an entertainer, and she started doing that at a very early age. Ask and you'll probably receive, which obviously was just the case in her case. Next up is this quote from Ms. Tyler Moore. "My grandfather once said, having watched me one entire afternoon prancing and leaping and cavorting, he said, this child will either end up on stage or end up in jail. Fortunately, I took the easy route." So there you go. She also said, take chances, make mistakes. That's how you grow. Pain nourishes your courage. You have to fail in order to practice being brave. Wow. So true. Next up, she said this: "You can't be brave if you've only had wonderful things happen to you." Mary also said this: "I've had the fame and the joy of getting laughter. Those are gifts." She also said the following: "I'm an experienced woman. I've been around." Well, all right, I might not have been around, but I've been nearby. She also said the following: "There are certain things about me that I will never tell anyone because I am a very private person. But basically, what you see is who I am. I'm independent. I do like to be liked. I do look for the good side of life and people. I'm positive. I'm disciplined. I like my life in order, and I am as neat as a pin." I think that pretty well describes her, huh? Mary Tyler Moore was born on December 29th, 1936, and I was really surprised about this. She was born in Brooklyn, New York, to George Tyler Moore, who was a clerk, and Marjorie, married, was the eldest of 3 siblings, and their home soon after birth was in Flushing, Queens. She attended St. Rose of Lima, a Catholic school in Brooklyn. When she was 8, her family moved to Los Angeles, where she attended St. Ambrose School and the Immaculate Heart High School. At 17, Moore wanted to be a dancer. So there are all those earlier wishes and dreams coming into actuality. She starred as Happy Hot Point, a tiny elf dancing on Hot Point appliances in TV commercials during the 1950s series Ozzie and Harriet, which happened to be her first job. You can still find those commercials, Hot Point appliances TV commercials with Mary Tyler Moore on YouTube. You must see them. They are amazing. In her first regular television role, Mary played a mysterious and glamorous telephone receptionist in the detective drama Richard Diamond, Private Detective, that aired from 1957 to 1960. In 1960, she guest starred in 2 episodes of the William Bendix Doug McClure NBC Western series Overland Trail, and also appeared in the first episode of NBC's sitcom The Tab Hunter Show. The year 1961 was a fruitful one for Mary as she got big parts in movies and TV, including Bourbon Street Beat, 77 Sunset Strip, remember that one? Surfside 6, Wanted, Dead or Alive, Steve Canyon, Hawaiian Eye, Thriller, and Lockup. Between 1961 and 1966, I'm sure you remember this, the amazing Dick Van Dyke Show, with Mary's energetic comic performances as Van Dyke's character wife, made her signature tight capri pants and herself internationally famous. It is said that the producers of the show wanted Mary to kind of like June Cleaver in Leave It to Beaver, wear, nice dresses, particularly corresponding to the time when the series aired. But Mary said no. She felt more comfortable wearing capri pants because she felt that that would define her character as a little more energetic and progressive than the typical housewife back in the day. Mary made her movie debut in the dramatic aviation film X-15, a fictionalized account of the X-15 research rocket plane program, which also starred David McLean and Charles Bronson. Mary played Miss Dorothy Brown in a really wonderful movie musical that so many people haven't seen but really should, called Thoroughly Modern Millie. I remember when that came out, and I went to the movie theater to see it, and I have the DVD. It's a great film. If you haven't seen Thoroughly Modern Millie, it's fun. The music is incredible. It stars Mary Tyler Moore, Julie Andrews, and Carol Channing. It's so much fun. It was a 1967 film about a naive young woman's adventures, which is Julie Andrews, when she sets her sights on marrying her wealthy boss. The film is set in the 1920s in New York City. Watch it. It is just so much fun, or at least do a search for clips of Thoroughly Modern Millie, the movie, on YouTube. Thoroughly Modern Millie was turned into a Broadway show. Usually, movie musicals originate from Broadway shows, but this was the opposite. The movie came out first, and then it was, I think, in 2000 that the Broadway show version of Thoroughly Modern Millie debuted, and it ran for a number of years. I saw it. It was amazing. Such a great story with great music, whether you see the show version or the film version. Mary Tyler Moore and her then husband, Grant Tinker, founded something you might remember called MTM Enterprises, Inc. in 1969, which of course produced the iconic, amazing The Mary Tyler Moore Show, plus other television shows and films. The company included a record label as well called MTM Records. The Mary Tyler Moore Show was one of the first shows to ever celebrate an independent career woman. It still holds up in reruns. It won 29 Emmy Awards, well-deserved, I might say, Emmy Awards during its entire run. Originally, you might not know that the character of Mary Richards, that Mary plays on The Mary Tyler Moore Show, was supposed to be a divorcee. However, CBS network researchers shut down the idea as they felt viewers didn't want divorced women in their living rooms. And besides all that, viewers kind of associated Mary on TV being married to Dick Van Dyke. So if she played a divorced woman on the Mary Tyler Moore Show, there would be, believe it or not, some viewers who would think that she divorced Dick Van Dyke. Wow. That's all I have to say is wow. But that's a fact. After 7 seasons, the Mary Tyler Moore Show decided to end while it was still performing very strongly in the TV ratings system. It was one of the rare series finales that allowed the characters to break character and bid farewell to one another in the context of the show. Moore also introduced each of her castmates to the audience for a final curtain call before the end credits rolled. And this was all filmed as part of that episode. I remember the final episode. Do you remember when all those wonderful characters in the newsroom hugged each other and then they kind of all moved together towards the door and turned the lights off, and that was it? Such a great ending to such a great show. The Mary Tyler Moore Show had an unprecedented number of female writers. Of the 75 contributing writers that made up the staff, 25 were women. Very unusual, almost to this day. The costume designer for the Mary Tyler Moore Show also built Mary's wardrobe with clothes that women, get this, could actually buy. Go figure. She, the designer, sourced clothes from one retailer. That way, Mary could mix and match separates that any woman could actually go out and purchase. And purchase they did. Remember the opening of the Mary Tyler Moore Show where she's walking down the streets of, what was it, Milwaukee, right? Or Minneapolis, St. Paul. And she takes off her beanie and throws it up into the air and the camera freezes. Well, the beret that Mary tosses in the opening credits of the Mary Tyler Moore Show was actually a gift from Moore's aunt. Mary wore it to the shoot because it was super cold that day on those streets. And one of the writers told her to take the hat, the beret, and throw it in the air. Who knew? In 1969, Mary starred opposite Elvis Presley. Do you remember this? In a film called Change of Habit. It was a 1969 musical drama film about 3 Catholic nuns and a doctor, Elvis Presley, who falls in love with one of the nuns, Mary Tyler Moore. 2 unsuccessful TV series would follow. One called Mary in 1978 featured David Letterman, Michael Keaton, Swoosie Kurtz, and Dick Shawn, and a one-off musical variety special, Mary's Incredible Dream, it was called, which featured Don Ritter. In the second half of the 1980s, she performed in a series titled Mary, which suffered from poor reviews and, believe it or not, internal strife within the production crew, and another show called Annie McGuire, which also was short-lived. Also, Mary did Broadway. She did a show called Whose Life Is It Anyway? And I seem to remember, although I couldn't find this in any research, that there was this play on Broadway, because I'm from New York City and I used to live, when I was an actor in New York City, in the theater district. So to get anywhere in New York City by foot, I would always walk through the theater district to get to where I needed to be. And I remember often I would pass this theater marquee where it seemed to have been like a one-character play, originally starring Richard Dreyfuss, about a guy who just stayed in bed and everything came to him. I think that was the forerunner of today, people using Alexa and stuff. But when Dreyfuss's contract ran out on Broadway in that show, I seem to remember Mary Tyler Moore replacing him, and she was a sensation in that one character play. But I couldn't find any research to back this up. And I know I wasn't dreaming, so hey, there you go. Between the years of 2001 and 2005, Mary guest starred on The Ellen Show, That 70s Show, and one of my favorites, Hot in Cleveland, starring her dear friend Betty White, and in between, reunited with castmates from the Dick Van Dyke Show. And that show was called The Dick Van Dyke Show Revisited. Moore was also a strong advocate against diabetes. You might know that she was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at the age of 33 and testified before Congress to promote stem cell research as a way of curing the illness. In 1980, Moore's son, Richie Meeker, accidentally shot himself and died. That same year, as luck would have it, Moore starred in the movie you might remember, Ordinary People, playing a woman whose son almost kills himself and another son who happens to die in an accident. She said she took the role as a way to deal with the real-life tragedy of her own son, Richie. And she was amazing in Ordinary People. She proved to the world that she had serious acting talent. Mary Tyler Moore married 3 times. Her first marriage was to Richard Carlton Meeker. At the age of 18, back in 1955, she gave birth to her son, as we just mentioned. Mary and Richard Carlton divorced in 1961. Her second marriage, as we already did mention, was Grant Tinker, then a CBS executive, and that occurred in 1962. The marriage lasted for 19 years, and the divorce occurred in 1981. Her third marriage was to a guy by the name of Robert Levine on November 23rd, 1983, and the marriage lasted until her passing. The great Mary Tyler Moore passed due to cardiopulmonary arrest on January 25th, 2017, at the age of 80. It is said that Mary once said, "I'm not an actress who can create a character. I simply play me." But you know what? Mary being Mary was the best thing that any of us could ever have asked for. I will close in simply saying this, and I would think you'll agree, there will never, ever be another Mary Tyler Moore. This has been Robert Landau, Live Life Well TV host. Thank you so much for tuning in.